but this local man that, but had the ability to put on paper, and immediately you could relate to that scene. Hi, my name's Lyn Powell. I was Lyn Whitbits. Know the area. I think it's a great little town. It's always been to my way of thinking, a town that's looked after itself. There's the hospital ladies, there's the footy club ladies, the tennis club. Whatever there is, there's a committee behind it, either supporting events or raising money. My grandfather was Cliff Sanders. He was a farmer, the farm next door to ours, and he was a Shire councillor, mayor several times, and passionately believed in Kaniva and what Kaniva could be. Was invited to Parliament at one stage to speak to them, but he never big noted himself. He was just, I suppose to us, he was just Papa, but he was a very humble man. He achieved many things, I think. Mum always said, and I don't know how quite true it was, that Papa would be a wealthy man with everybody paid him back the money he had lent them when they were in trouble. He was just a very humble man that believed in his family and community and liked to help people. Where older sister Elaine, younger brother Barry, Elaine, we all went to the little Sandsmere school. And by the time Sandsmere School closed, Elaine was living in town with my grandparents to go to the high school in Nil because there was no secondary education in Kaniva. Dad was a footy trainer, loved his footy. Both played tennis. Like there was tennis courts at Sandsmere. There was tennis courts when that closed. There was tennis courts in Moram. There was there was the Adelphian courts, which is around that area of Kaniva, and the courts where there's tennis courts now. There was there, and they used to hold. When I was a teenager, every year they had big tennis tournaments, and we'd have some really notable players come here to play exhibition tennis. Cricket pitches were actually just in paddocks, and you had to if the farmer had to let his cows out, you had to go down early in the Saturday morning and make sure you got all the cows off the cricket pitch before the game was started, or the cricket field. Friday, Mum spent the whole of Friday making little pies, sausage rolls, and sponge cake. Dad was a trainer, and he'd just go off Saturday. Well, we'd all come into footy together, and he'd go off. But he'd come home, the car and the house, every every Saturday, it'd smell of footy liniment from him rubbing down the trainer, rubbing down the football players. Well, I suppose as a kid, to me, it was just normal. But Mum, yes, had a wood stove, and I can remember she made beautiful sponges. And I can remember she used to have the oven, she'd open it and put her hand in. Oh, yes, that's the right temperature. She'd judge the temperature with her hand in the wood stove to make it the right. We did grow a lot of our own vegetables, and this might sound awful, but we had a long drop toilet. And the end seepage used to seep out down the paddock a bit, and every year it grew the best pumpkins you could ever imagine. Wheaton Store from Moram used to come around with a little truck with everything in it, and then there was also a Rawley's van that used to come around, which was all medical supplies sort of thing that I guess could be sold without a doctor or a nurse's permission. But Rawley's tincture, throat mixture, Rawley's salve for a sore, 3 days a week we used to get our bread in the mail, and there was a mad rush to get to the mail first if we were home and cut off the square loaves, cut off the corners and eat this fresh bread. I went to school started school at Sandsmere. Wasn't quite 5 when I started school. I mean, one teacher for the whole school, all the various classes. Peppercorn tree that we used to climb up and throw the peppercorns at the boys when they were teasing us. They'd get to school, my sister, had a horse, and we used to ride behind her on the horse. One incident I remember was my brother snuck out of the school and he disappeared. No one could find him, and it was really quite concerning. School finished, wasn't there, and it was nearly on dusk. Uncle Murray Sanders, whose house was not far from the school and property, remembered a hollow tree on his property. Sure enough, Butch was at the bottom of the hollow tree, sound asleep. Elaine came to live with my grandparents in town so she could go to high school in Nil. By the time I was high school age, we had the con school had opened in Kaniva. So I finished my education in Kaniva. I remember playing hopscotch, skipping. You used to take your skipping rope to school so you could skip. Playing drafts under the dining room table. Every Sunday we'd have lunch in at my grandparents', and my aunt and uncle and their two children would be there as well. And we'd all hide under the dining room table and play drafts and checkers and what have you. But yeah, even at nights as kids at home, there was no TV till I was a teenager. So you used to play drafts or checkers or, yeah, I suppose Christmas was the town had all been lit up, lights around the veranda posts, and there'd be a big, even though the highway was there, it'd sort of be closed off and the traffic was directed around the main street. The two roads that go, this road behind us and the one that goes, Dungy Street, that goes past the park, they'd be directed around there. And there'd be a street party in the main street on Christmas Eve. And Santa would come to all the kids and it'd be, yeah. We usually had Christmas Day at Mama and Papa's. And my aunt and her husband, their two were there, and my uncle and his wife and their four were there. So there was always lots of kids and lots of fun. And I had a very happy childhood out on the farm, running barefooted and getting full of prickles. And then I guess nowadays it wouldn't happen. Children don't leave school that early, but I left school, as I said, at 15. Always knew I wanted to be a nurse. I don't know why, but Mum said I was always nursing my dolls and putting them in bandages on them and fixing them up. And I went up here and there was a nursing home in those days, and there were 5 of us, I think, that were, as we call nurses' aides, because we weren't training, that worked at the hospital, and 2 or 3 trained sisters. I can remember a lady, I suppose must have been a single lady that didn't want to have a baby in her hometown, coming from the other side of border town, hoping to get to Nil or Horsham to have a baby. Knew it was coming, called into Kaniva. I was on night duty, and honest to God, Helen, all I could do was manage to catch that baby. It was falling out. I knew you had to tie the cord and do those sort of things. And then they'll ring the matron up to come over and see that everything was okay. That was my introduction to delivering babies. Would have been 16 perhaps, if I was lucky. I mean, today it wouldn't happen that a 16-year-old would be on night duty in a hospital on her own with a sister on call. Yes, I always wanted to be a nurse. Don't ask me why, but it was just, and I was 15, come to live in the nursing home here, work in the local hospital. We were called nurses' aides in those days because no training. There was about, I think there was 6 of us girls, and just basically learned on the job till I was old enough to go away and do my training. But I can remember once 2 of us trying to lift a 23-stone man. I blessed the lifting machines when they came in at the Ballarat base. And when I'd finished my training down there, I did come back here for, I'm not sure, 6 months, for a while anyway, till Dad was cross with me. He couldn't understand why I wouldn't do my mid-training down here, but I wanted to go to Crown Street because it was the only nurses midwifery training recognised to go overseas, and I planned to go to England and work. Some tall, handsome, dark young man got in the way and ruined those plans. But I did do my midwifery, and I really enjoyed midwifery. I still think to this day I could safely deliver a baby. I delivered Alistair Clarkson. There's my claim to fame. In those days, it was just a normal thing that people didn't differentiate between having a baby and coming to hospital for any other reason. It was just they went to the local doctor and was expected, well, they expected to have their baby in the local hospital. It was just the way it was back then. Usually about a week. It was quite a while to get them, I'm allowed to say, waiting for their milk to come in so they could have established successful feeding before they went home and get to know their babies, because some mothers were just born mothers and others did need a hand to handle this little creature and get used to it and not be frightened by it. And at that stage, the dads were waiting out in one of the rooms off further down the corridor in the hospital, waiting for the baby. But and they were allowed in as soon as the baby was born. Maybe even before the cord was cut, but they were never there for the birth. I think a man that had, like Dad, 2 daughters before he had his son, what if one of those girls married someone that wasn't a farmer, didn't want to be in the land, sort of thing? I think back then it was very important that they had a son to continuation of that land. And I mean, some families were small, but there were big families. There's one family I can remember of 12 children. Most families had at least 2 or 3, if not 4 children. But I don't think there was a real problem about feeding the family. The only families that I think did have problems, and I can remember that being talked about because is if the father was a big drinker and he'd spend all his money on alcohol and the family would miss out. So then I think a lot of the mothers' clubs or whatever you were would get together with tinned food and preserves and fresh veggies if they were growing them or what, and give to the families. From my memories, we had what they called restrooms that were built specifically for women to go in and either breastfeed their babies or change them or just have a rest. And there used to be toilet facilities, a nice little garden where the children could play, and then there was like a lounge come dining area that they could sit or rest or what have you. But it was called the restrooms, and it was specifically for women. I don't think people that live here today realise how much the ladies in the past actually worked and raised to get facilities. There was a ladies' hospital auxiliary. There was several other ladies' committees that worked, be it supplying supper for balls or selling things down the street, raising money to do these things. There was a big fundraising event right throughout the town, building the new hospital. But I believe all the churches in town were basically funded by the parishioners, holding events and getting money to build the churches themselves. They weren't built by the diocese. All the churches were active in those days. When I was a teenager or a young woman, um, there was a Catholic church, the Anglican church, the Methodist church, the Presbyterian church, and they were all active communities. And I got married. Well, we got married in the Anglican church, and we had our reception in the town hall. It was always a big thing back then. I mean, now I think it's quiet and private, but always people were just excited for the couple. Oh, so and so's finally got engaged. And, yeah, and they'd have engagement parties. Usually, the girls that were going to be her bridesmaids or maid of honour or whatever, they would hold an engagement party for them, and they'd have a tin kettling, as they called it, where kitchen things were you gave them, be it a cake tin or whatever. Yeah, I think I grew up in the best of times. Yeah, I just think I was very lucky to be born in the era I was.